Hello, my name is Mariah Blackbird Perry. I am the Tribal Mitigation Fellow at the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, EPIC. Welcome back. If you joined me previously, hello to those of you who are new. This is one of our videos in the series discussing tribal compensatory mitigation. As a recap, in the first two videos, we briefly discussed an overview of compensatory mitigation under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, and the second video discussed the case studies on tribal participation in compensatory mitigation, either as wholly owned and operated by the tribe, in a partnership with the tribe, or the up-and-coming mitigation projects, including briefly the successes and challenges that tribes had in establishment of mitigation projects in tribal lands. As a roadmap for this video, I'm going to talk to you about the recap of the case studies and challenges, specific policy changes needed to be more inclusive to tribes, and what tribes should consider if they are thinking about compensatory mitigation on tribal lands. As a recap, a few tribes have done compensatory mitigation on tribal lands, 7 compensatory mitigation projects in total, banks in Luffy programs, 1 in Luffy program, either on tribal fee or tribal trust land, established for a variety of reasons beyond mere restoration, all wetland mitigation, no species yet, no conservation banking as of yet, and are all completely unique from one another. There were many challenges that tribes have faced, many of those challenges which I have personally worked on and continue to work on to be more inclusive and accommodating to tribes and tribal sovereignty and compensatory mitigation. Specifically, the policy and accompanying guidance is not inclusive to tribes or have any of the federal Indian law implications, considerations that tribes face, upholding status as a government for a tribe, tribal immunity, site protection, and financial assurances, to name a few. So what should change? Policies around compensatory mitigation should change to be more inclusive to tribal participation and sponsoring of mitigation projects on tribal land. The policy should also recognize the status of tribes as sovereign entities who choose to participate or sponsor mitigation projects. Sponsoring mitigation projects, the policy should also be amended to recognize tribes as potential sponsors of mitigation projects on tribal lands or in partnership with non-tribal entities or with the federal government. The site protection is a big area that definitely needs some policy change or amendments. Tribes should be allowed to alternative site protection mechanisms such as intergovernmental agreements or national resource management plans, like government entities under the mitigation rules. Sovereign entity property and tribes are sovereign nations recognized under U.S. Constitution and in treaties. Site protection is linked to land and tribal land, which is very complex and may require some additional particular guidance for site protection to fully relate the considerations and implications for alternative site protection mechanisms that may be more appropriate for tribal sovereignty. Another change that is needed is agency-educated personnel. At least one person for the Army Corps or under the mitigation program should be well-versed in federal Indian law and policy implications to better serve tribes who are looking to establish compensatory mitigation projects on tribal land. Currently, tribes are not only having to learn the process in the first instance, but also educate agency personnel on how tribes work and tribal considerations. Just because something is new does not mean it needs to be treated as lesser than what it is. And lastly, food for thought. A place to start when considering a mitigation project on tribal land, or what should tribes think about if they're considering compensatory mitigation. The first is a feasibility study. This should research and be conclusive about the feasibility of a mitigation project on tribal land, whether it is solely owned or in partnership with a non-tribal or tribal entity or person. They should also look at the cultural alignment with the goals of the tribe and that they have for coming generations, what the tribe needs to do now to meet those goals. They should look at things like finances, because it takes a lot up front to finance a mitigation bank in particularly, not so much an in-lieu program, but definitely a bank. They should also look at things like revenue gain after the monitoring period, credit sales, and credit need. They should reference demand for offsets. These could come from the tribe itself or other entities that have impacts, and the potential to be used for an economic development tool. The feasibility study can be written in a way that the EPA wetland development grants can fund it as a pilot study, but every tribe is different. Financials of it should take into consideration cost, the life, and the revenue, and the tribe needs to figure out how to finance this. It also should calculate the risk of success. Second thing it should look at is land considerations. What does the land of the tribe look like today? And what does it need to look like to be able to do a compensatory mitigation project on tribal land? Is your tribe one of the 118 tribes impacted by alignment policies, or does your tribe suffer from severely fractionated land interests that make tribal development hard? What are the steps that can be done to remedy this? If needed to, how long will it take? Or are you one of the tribes that has enough revenue resources to target, prospect, and valuable mitigation sites on lands to buy? Tribes can buy land just as private competitors in the mitigation market do. Tribal sovereignty. How does doing a mitigation project on tribal land serve tribal sovereignty? This will look different for each tribe, as it should, because no tribe is the same, and all 574 are different. But how does establishing a mitigation project on tribal land serve and protect tribal sovereignty? The seventh generation way of thinking. How does doing a mitigation project preserve and protect natural resources for future generations? The seventh generation way of thinking is something that is prevalent in tribal ways of thought. But how does this impact our future generations and their access to natural resources? What do we want their access to natural resources to look like? And what are the steps to achieving that while serving the prosperity of our present generations? Another consideration is the policy itself. There is currently no inclusion for tribes under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act compensatory mitigation policy. It is not to say that there won't ever be, but regardless, tribes have been resilient to develop these kinds of mitigation projects and thrive at them. Some questions would be, in what current Army Corps district does the tribe sit? What does the land look like? Who are the state agencies that may be participating? And is there a good relationship with the tribe in the Army Corps and the state? What are the regs and requirements, and how do those regs or requirements align with tribal sovereignty? And how are the rules applied? Is the tribe going to be canned as a private entity, a government entity, or something entirely different? And how will that serve tribal sovereignty? Additionally, there are 38 Army Corps districts that oversee the wetland mitigation programs, and there's one 2008 mitigation banking rule that can potentially be interpreted 38 different ways. Another consideration is perpetuity. This means forever on the 2008 mitigation rule and policies. These mitigation sites are developed to be restored in perpetuity, meaning no development on the mitigation site after the restoration is done. Is that okay with the tribe? How is the tribe in the present generations going to relay that to the future generations? Once you do a mitigation project, you can't get out. Think of the scenarios for the mitigation banking plan or project and what exactly you as a tribe are going to put in there. Are you going to be harvesting tribal plant species, exercise tribal treaty rights on the mitigation site, hunting, gathering, and the things that would be included in the plan to benefit the uniqueness of the tribes and the land that the tribes have, because it is hard to go back. These are things that can be legal agreements to benefit the tribe. Site protection is another consideration. This is where most tribes I've seen run into problems. Site protection is a requirement for a mitigation project or bank. It has to be in place prior to the sale of any credits. Generally, conservation easements are used, but for a tribe as a government entity, there should be other options. Or is the tribe okay with using a conservation easement or a transfer of land title, restricted deed, whatever is listed in the accompanying guidance, and giving an interest in their land to a third party? And thinking forward, who would that third party be? This is something I've worked on extensively, coming up with better solutions for tribal site protection because of the implications of federal Indian policy and tribal sovereignty. An additional consideration, depending on the tribe and its own cultural differences and how they exercise their tribal sovereignty, each mitigation project and bank will look different. None of them are going to be exactly the same, and each will look different in all aspects above. To conclude, tribes have a prime ability and land capacity to sponsor or partner in mitigation projects on tribal lands. There is a lot of opportunity, from ecological restoration, economic benefit, and opportunity to be a key player in the growth of the mitigation industry. It is a complex concept to grasp, compensatory mitigation, but I do think tribes and those that work with tribes do need to be aware of the opportunity in compensatory mitigation. This is what I have learned, and I wanted to share it with you. Water is our most sacred resource, and if development impacts are going to happen, tribes should have a bigger say and a bigger role in the wetland mitigation industry, as well as the environmental market industry as a whole. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Our emails can be found on our website, and feel free to check out our other videos on our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me.